what does it take for somebody to get started in group coaching? Now, one of the things that I've heard, like at least in the CHPC world, but another bit, well, you can just get started with group coaching. And I would say you can, but what does it take, really, Rob, or Daniel, either one? But actually, before we even get started, maybe we can spend, because I promised that we would do that. I know you guys have been here separately, but maybe you guys can share your common story as to how you got connected and how you guys became business partners as you move forward.
I'll let Rob do that.
So obviously Daniel and I, so the way we got connected, it was funny because they were asking me this story at lunch yesterday, but the way that we got connected was Daniel and I met each other in person at a lot of the Brendan events. And I swore, because one of the sessions I rented, we were calling it the coach's mansion, but there were like 10 coaches. And I was swearing that Daniel was there, but he said, no, he didn't actually stay overnight at the house, but he was there a lot. So I thought he actually was living there. So I think that's the time that we spent the most time together and really bonded and connected with each other. And literally, I was just keeping in touch with him. So fast forward, I had trained as a coach in 2014, trained as a facilitator in 2017, and started combining a lot of those skills. And 2020, my plan was to downsize enough that I could fit everything I owned into a Sprinter van and then drive around the country, stay with friends, and facilitate large-scale live events at different places in the country. Well, obviously, the universe had other plans that the live event in 2020 was not going to happen. And so I remember, and Daniel laughs at this whenever I say it. Literally, I was walking in a beautiful graveyard, which sounds like a contradiction, but this is a graveyard in Monterey, California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And it was just like really epic. And I was just calling friends that I had known from the past and catching up with them because, quite frankly, I was losing my shit with being locked up and not being able to interact with people. And so I was just reaching out to friends from the past. One of the comments that I made when Daniel and I was talking was, you know, Daniel, I'm capable of building a business on my own, but I really don't like it. And he's like, me too. Let's do something together. So our partnership was born out of just a conversation where we both realized we were in the same place in building a business, because building a business on your own, as I said, it's possible, but it is so much harder than if you have support. And it doesn't have to be an official partnership relationship. So maybe this is one of the first tips is find your tribe and don't do it alone. Don't do anything really alone, because it's so much harder. Because it's not just a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. When you start partnering with the right people, it becomes exponential. So anyway, I couldn't help myself throwing a tip in there, but the way we came together was just through that conversation. And when we initially had the conversation, we didn't even know what we were going to do. It was just the idea of like, let's partner together. And the whole idea of doing what is now Group Coach Magic came about from a couple of months of us trying to do something in the real estate world, because a lot of the live events that I was facilitating all related to real estate. And Daniel had been working with a lot. He'd been a real estate investor himself. He'd been working with a lot of realtors also. So we started there, and everything we did was just difficult in terms of thinking about our copy, getting in the head of the clients, that type of thing, like building a long-term business. And the way it shifted into Group Coach Magic was literally from a post in a Facebook group, which was saying, one of the coaches was saying, how do I move from one-to-one to group coaching? And I was like, oh, well, that's simple. You combine the coaching skills with facilitation skills, and you've got a beautiful group coaching session. And he's like, how do you do that? And I said, oh, I'll jump on a call with you. 47 other coaches said, oh, I need that too. And so we said, okay, change your plans. I'm not going to be jumping on the phone with this one person. We're going to be creating a Zoom call. And a bunch of the coaches showed up, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is mind blowing. Thank you. Which then turned into a 4-hour training course, which then turned into a mastermind, which then turned into Group Coach Magic. So that's kind of how Daniel and I, the evolution of Group Coach Magic and how we originally partnered together. and Daniel could probably talk about how well it's working. I think one of the things, if you're going to choose partners, make sure they're the right people. Make sure they're the people who amplify your skills, who share common values with you. I think that's the most important thing. And Daniel and I are so aligned on that. We're like, wow, how could we be like, we both feel lucky. Like, how could we have picked any better, in terms of the way that we work together?
Yeah, I like picking business partners based on like, oh, I want to do something not alone. So do I. That's not necessarily a formula for success.
No.
Like if you just not being alone is not a formula for business success, but finding a partnership where you have such common shared values about how you think about things, how you work together, how you think about your business partner, the complementary skill sets. There's so many variables here that matter in business partnerships, and I've been a member of a lot of business partnerships, and some were really challenging, and I've seen a lot of business partnerships fail, and a lot of it has to do with the people and how they interact and how they communicate. So I think the idea of forming a business partnership is great, but just make sure that you've thought about some of these questions ahead of time.
Yeah, I love this, and I've had a similar experiences that building a business alone, it's painful, to be honest. I mean, you could do this stuff, but a lot of times you're sitting there, it's like it's a lonely world when you build something alone. And the whole idea of building a business, you're talking about an organization, or you're talking about building a system. I think the exciting thing comes when you're working with other people, and that's why Daniel and I are partners too, and we have other partners in the picture too. And it's actually one of the reasons I've realized that people don't do it is because it's very complex. It takes a lot of time to get used to each other and build that trust and build that way of communication that needs refinement. Along the way, you lose people. Along the way, you learn and grow yourself. And one of the things that I've learned is I've actually grown as a human being and as a leader just within the partnerships. Would you guys say that?
100%.
Yeah, definitely 100%, because it's conscious communication, so important. I was just thinking about the analogy, or how similar it is to picking somebody that you're going to get married to. You don't just jump in on the first date. You have to make sure.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, sometimes you do. But
I mean, some people do. Not saying you should.
Yeah, exactly. But typically you're vetting the person for values, for alignment, for where you want to go. I think that's the other mission. So values need to be similar, and then also what your vision of the future needs to be along parallel tracks with each other. So I think those elements are really important. And one quick clarification too, when I was sharing the model, like Faisal, you were sharing in your win that you just signed up with another coach that you're excited to be working with. The business partners that we have, they don't have to be formal arrangements where you start a corporation with somebody and you have all kinds of legal entanglements and shared, that type of thing. It could be you're with a group or a family for a period of time while you're on the journey. So again, values alignment and mission. And if you have the same mission as another group, join with that group while they're on that mission, and they'll take you from point A to point B. And then you're like, oh, they're like, think of them more as hiking buddies or mission buddies, or whatever. Like you could say you're running a military campaign and you're there for a certain period of time, and then you stay friends with the person, but you're not entangled in them in a long term, because most partnerships actually fail over the long term. I mean, that's the history of it. So it's there's two models of it. So we're not suggesting get into a long-term partnership relationship. We're saying pick the people that you need that will take you from point A to point B, and they're aligned with your values in a powerful way, and you'll go far faster with a group of people than you will try to do it on your own.
Which is actually like a perfect segue into like what we do in Group Coach Magic is like helping people have the group of people around them to create that supportive community that allows them to move faster as a person in the group, not just as a business person, right? So if you're coaching, I don't know, in the health world, all your people in your group are all aligned on a journey together. They all have a similar aspiration, and having this group creates a momentum of its own. And if you do it well, you can actually make it more powerful than just a one-on-one environment, right? And there's definitely pros and cons to both, but with group, you having this supportive community can be so powerful for people.
Yeah, and also to me, how I translate it and what I've learned in businesses as strategic partnerships, that you don't necessarily, like Rob said, that you don't necessarily need to be partners on paper. You could be just organizations supporting each other. And for example, as Coaching Master Community and Group Coach Magic, we are natural partners in some senses because we help in different areas, but they're complementary. And I've actually created strategic partnerships with my clients, quite a few of them, at least a couple of them long term. One of them, I'm doing an event with their organization, and they're sending their clients to my community, but they get a part of that too. But they're not really on paper. They're not partners with me in that way, but we're partnering with helping each other to build this brand. And similar to one of my other clients who is becoming a coach in the community, but she's also bringing in clients, but we're not partners on paper, as in we don't have the same company. So there are so many different ways of doing this, but the idea is just that, do you feel long-term? I loved what you said, that there needs to be an alignment long-term in terms of vision and values, for sure. And then you can figure out the strategy as you move forward. So I do want to jump into our topic around. So let's say it's a coach, just got out of a certification or has been to a couple of certifications or has just gotten started coaching. What does the transition from one-on-one to group coaching look like? Now, you shared a little bit before, Rob, that you combine coaching and facilitation skills. Can you create some differentiations there? And like, what does that journey look like for somebody?
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized, and I just even had this experience with an advanced coach, which is you take the existing one-to-one framework and you just apply it to a group. Like, so instead of having one person on a call and you're asking them individual questions, now you have 12 people on a call and you're saying, oh, here's a question, journal on that. And they may share it in the group through chat. They may not, they may just journal on it. That was the form that group coaching took. And I'm like, no, please, please, please don't do it that way. So there's certain basic things that create a transformational experience in a group coaching. And one of the basic things is having everyone feel safe, seen, and heard, and have them feel safe, seen, and heard as early in the session as possible. So one of the things Daniel and I are really big on is whenever we're opening a session, that we will ask a question to kick it off where we get people grounded in the session, connected to each other in some way. And then just as you did with the wins, share a positive frame, share something where everyone gets the chance to share and have their voices heard early in the session. So the big mindset shift is, don't just take whatever framework you have and adapt one-on-one to group and try to do it the same way. Group coaching is a fundamentally different process than one-to-one coaching is. And this is where the mindset shift comes. It's actually easier and it's more fun for the coach. Like, you can get more transformation. You can have a much less emotionally taxing session for you as the coach, for yourself, and you can get better results for your clients all simultaneously in a group coaching format versus the one-to-one format if you're doing it correctly.
Awesome. Daniel, did you want to add something to that?
Well, Rob just described our GPS framework, which is grounding, positive frame, and sharing, which is things that you need to do early in the session to create that sense of safety. But I think, part of the challenge with going from one-on-one to group is often that people are not like sure what to do. They don't know how to do those things. They don't know how to create that sense of safety. And partly it's because they have not led a group before. And when you're leading a group, you have a responsibility to take the group through a journey. If you're coaching them through a session, it's your responsibility to create that container, just like it is in one-on-one. But now you have a container for multiple people, so your attention is not often trained to be able to to care for everybody at the same time. So when you're one-on-one, it's where to focus your attention is really, really like obvious. It's like you're present with this one person in front of you. But when you're in a group, all of a sudden, like, how do you make sure that everybody's having a good experience? How do you make sure that people are getting progress in what they're there for? How do you make sure that people in your group are having a good experience? And all those things are part of the transformational experience. And how do you make sure it's authentic? How do you keep on top of all that stuff? It's almost like there's a whole new level of skills that are important. That, you know, one-on-one, you don't have to think about those things, but in group, it's like a level change in terms of how much attention you need to pay to things. And yes, you do need to pay attention to the individuals in your group, especially if you're maybe doing coaching with them, or if you're hearing from one person, but everybody else is listening at the same time, and you want to make sure you're engaging with everybody, because if I'm in a group, I want my time to be, if I'm a participant in a group, I want my time to be productive. I want it to be useful. I don't want to waste my time just waiting for my turn. You know, that's not as effective. So sometimes people going from one-on-one to group don't understand those dynamics, and a lot of it can come with experience. But what we've done is we've worked on like turning that into a system. What are the key tools and you know, strategies that you can use in a group context to just run playbooks and run, you know, we call them choreographies on playbooks sometimes, which is like, hey, do this, then do that, then do this. And your members will be like, oh, they're going to have a totally different experience. And often when we share these things, then coaches are like, oh, I never thought of doing that. Yeah, because you don't have the group experience. You haven't learned the things we've learned by trying these things out and experimenting, and sometimes falling flat on our face and getting the feedback and tweaking them. So we've improved these tools over years here. So there's just a lot more to think about.
So as you were sharing, it reminded me of some of my early group coaching sessions, and it was exactly that. I watched another coach do the same exact thing, as that you start with one person, you talk to that one person, move to the next person, move to the next person, and literally it would. And a lot of times you would run out of time, so you're hurrying, and you're getting impatient with one person's comment because it's getting longer and longer. Like, how do I engage with the rest of the people now? The group size is getting bigger. It's like, what the hell do I do? And especially as I was fortunate to be put in it wasn't my personal clients, and I watched another coach who was more experienced do this, but he was making a lot of mistakes. When I went there, I started similar to him, and I realized a lot of the stuff he was doing is not working, especially when you increase the group size. It just doesn't work, because you won't get to everybody. You won't even get to half the people in there. But what I learned as I experimented with different things is what you said, was that we need to find a way to get everybody involved in some way, and not make it like a turns thing. Is that we're leveraging the group environment to create insights, to pull out the wisdom from the group, and help them start to think about what would it look like for them to move ahead. And there are different strategies to do that. But I'm curious, so as somebody who's getting started, and not everybody will have the same path as me, but what would it take for them? Like, what skill sets do they need to build in terms of facilitation? Where would they practice something like this as they're getting started?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is what Daniel said, is it's a fundamental shift from your role in your mindset. So typically when you're coming as a coach, you're thinking, okay, I just got the certification, I just got this training, so I'm the expert. So the mindset of a coach moving from one-to-one to group is the mindset of, I'm the expert and I'm going to dispense my knowledge to the participants. And it gets worse in a group, because now you have more people to help, to support. And it turns your role into a guide. So you have to see yourself literally as a guide of the conversation, and you're just watching for the experience that everybody's having. So I think that's one of the very first elements, is to shift your mindset to, I am now the guide, curating an experience and creating something. The other thing which you were talking about is, how do you create a situation where everybody's getting value simultaneously, even if there's one particular person on the hot seat? And that is one of the things that goes along with that mindset shift, is Now that you realize you're just guiding the conversation, you're involving the wisdom of all the other group members in the conversation, even with the person on the hot seat. So there's a presupposition here. And this is one of the things we'd recommend when you're creating a group coaching, is just exactly the two characteristics that we were talking about in partnering earlier on, which is create a group of people that have common shared values. And that's just because the dynamics of working together, if people have fundamentally different values, it can cause problems in a group coaching situation. It changes the dynamic. And then the other thing is a shared aspiration. So everybody's trying to do the same thing. So it may not be helpful to have people with completely wildly different goals, like one person's working on their health, one person's working on wealth, one person's working on relationships in the same group. But if you had, for example, a group of real estate investors that are all trying to get better at the art of being able to make partnerships and find deals with other people, now you have a common goal. And once you've done that, once you've created a group coaching situation where people have shared values and a shared aspirational mission with each other, those two elements, then you can create hot seats or coaching sessions where now everybody, because they're peers, they're on the same journey, everybody's wisdom, everybody's insight can be leveraged. And even though there's one person on the hot seat, you can draw out the wisdom of the other people of like, hey, before expert coach, the person who's conducting the coaching session, says anything as far as suggestions, what have all the rest of you done that's worked in this particular situation that Mr. Hot Seat member is asking for, or Mrs. Hot Seat member is asking for? And because of that, you're getting everyone leaning in, you're getting everyone interested, they're all paying attention, they're getting value because they're thinking through what's the best of what works, and they're hearing what works from all the other participants simultaneously. So everybody's extracting value simultaneously from the discussion, even though on the surface it looks like one person's on the hot seat.